Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Tutoring Business. We have a special guest. We've got Christopher Banham with us today. We've met Christopher properly at the National Tutors Conference, but I think we had kind of met virtually, or at least responded or corresponded through Facebook. I'm really excited about this because there's a story of hope. There's a story of recovery here that I know a lot of people will resonate with. And I'm not going to steal any thunder here at all. I'm going to hand over to Chris, like how Christopher, sorry, how we tend to structure these things is like, I want to get into like what you're doing now, but actually what led you away from teaching, what led you towards that self-improvement journey that you've been on over the last few months, and possibly the last year or so, I believe.
Yes, thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to
You're
be here
welcome.
today. Um, it's been a journey of 2 years, really. Now, perhaps a little longer. Um, the up until lately, I was a classroom teacher, faculty leader, assistant head teacher, and various other things in the educational world. And I'd done other things and different things in the past, and I'd enjoyed and thrived in all of them, and was busy pressing on with my career, and and this was going in quite a linear fashion, really, perhaps a strange linear fashion to in some respects, but linear. But then I started to not feel okay. Uh, this first began some way through COVID, and gradually became more and more profound, until at the point, would have been March 2022. Coming back from what should have been a return from the half-term holiday.
Mhm.
I realised on the Monday, I can't go in on the Monday. I'm not feeling okay. Well, okay, I'll go back in on the Tuesday. Can't go in on the Tuesday. Okay, well, I'll go back in, and when Wednesday comes, oh, I'm not okay here.
Mm.
And at that point, I was signed off. Now this was all news to me, because I've never been ill. I've had colds and flu, and yes, I've had COVID, but I've never been ill to the extent that I'd have to get a note from the doctor. It's more kind of, patch yourself up and get back in again territory. And I don't know what the foggiest was going on. And nor was I in a position, physically or cerebrally, to really work out very readily what was going on, because my body wasn't working too good, and nor was my brain. So it was a real struggle. Uh, but we've got the internet these days, so as much as sometimes it affects our life in very negative ways, for the person looking to find out what's up when you're poorly, it can be a real blessing. And amongst with all the frantic Googling and podcasting and all the various other things to try and work out, look, what's going on here.
Mm.
Uh, I eventually managed to piece together the answer, which is something that we call autistic burnout, which, even as an autistic person, I was not aware of. I
So
didn't know this was a thing.
did you know at this point you were autistic? You've been diagnosed with autism.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, this is something I did a number of years ago. I first twigged that I was autistic when uh, toward the start of my teaching career, really, when we first, at the school I was at the time, which had become, from being an independent school, became a free school, and the nature of our intake changed. We had some quite good, especially for the time, training about
Mm.
autism. At which point, I was all the way through thinking, hang on, that's me, that's me, that's me. And, left with this, because of, I'd heard about autism before, but because, some of the training and some of the information isn't an accurate depiction of reality, it had never twigged that this was me until this time.
Mm.
But I didn't really do anything about it at the time because I had no great need to do anything about it because it didn't really have any, or so I thought, any bearing on what I was doing or where I was going. It was only when I had children that I thought, well, as part of a journey of self-discovery, and importantly, as part of something which in the future might help them to understand themselves, let's go and do this diagnosis for me now. And so that
Mm.
was something I did, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But again, it was kept in my back pocket. I wasn't disclosed about it. I didn't really have any need to be, and nor was I part of any autistic community
Mm.
in real life, online or otherwise. It was just part of my identity, which really just sat there, which is how come, I just wasn't aware that autistic burnout was a thing.
Mm. I didn't know. It's not something I know much about. So tell us a little bit about this, Christopher. So, um, you were talking about coming back to school on the Monday and you couldn't because you didn't feel well, and then you continued not to feel well on Tuesday, and then the Wednesday you get the sick note. So when you say not well, what were the symptoms? What were you actually experiencing at that point?
Well, I'm afraid the list is quite considerable. It started off when I first started feeling well with it was just a tremor,
Okay.
just a tremor. But this was a year to 6 months before I finally went off. But the list of other things is quite substantial, uh, and it really affects what you do in the classroom. For example, one of the things we call it shutdown
Mm.
in the autistic community. That's when there tend to be two reactions to extreme situations. Meltdown, where you express all of what you're feeling, you express outwardly, and it's very visible and very vocal and very visceral.
Mm.
I don't do that. What I experience as shutdown is as it sounds, everything stops.
Mm.
Can't speak, you can't think, you can't see. Your bodily movements become, as if there's lead weights attached to all of your limbs. It's pretty difficult to teach when you're in that situation in a school which although a lovely school, is a challenging school in its social cultural demographic. It's pretty difficult to teach in the best of circumstances, let alone when you can't move, you can't speak, you can't process. Um, and so this has been going on for quite a long time, but as teachers, we mask our discomfort. As autistic people, we mask our discomfort. You're looking at the world champion of masking, camouflaging, we call it, when you reach that professional level of totally glossing over what you're feeling and what you're really experiencing and putting on that mask, saying, look, I'm okay here. I'm the strong one. To the
Mm.
extent that everyone is convinced, including and
Mm.
most of all yourself. And that's how you keep going until eventually, as in my case, the body and the brain just said, no, no, no more.
Mm.
And of course, as a teacher, you go, no, must go in, must teach Wednesday's very
Mm.
important class. But your body and brain are going, no, no, you cannot do it. Uh, and I don't know if everyone reaches that point where it becomes impossible, but that's the point that I reached.
Mm.
And it wasn't for a want of trying to overcome that. I'd been overcoming it for the longest time, in truth. Um, the block just became insuperable. And and I had to stop. The the particular symptom I just described is one of a list of many. Uh, it's it's a vicious thing when you've got that autistic burnout mixed in with the occupational burnout, mixed in with the teacher burnout, all of which are very profound
Mm.
uh, afflictions to experience. It's a nasty business. Um, yeah, so that was my March 2022.
So you get that sick note, which, and like you say, the process has started before. Okay, your process towards this point has been, well, it sounds like quite a long time coming, and through the masking and just keep almost convincing yourself you're okay and convincing the others around you, you get to this point where it's not anymore. Does this prompt you to go and, like, obviously you've obviously researched that further? Does that take you towards a community of people who have experienced the same or similar? Does that lead you down a particular path to find the right recovery methods?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So from this point on, it's all about finding out what you can, because I'm
Mm.
afraid the medical community in the main struggle to help with this matter. For all and it's not obviously not for a lack of goodness or a lack of will. It's just there isn't that expertise. Um,
Okay.
and I did receive some great help from within the more traditional medical community in terms of people to touch base with and people to talk to, but the level of specialism which I
Mm.
required just wasn't there. This particular thing wasn't understood. So it
With
meant
you.
going out into the community, it meant talking online, it meant podcasts,
Mm.
um, and it meant trying to connect with other people who'd experienced this to get information from them about ways out. And those people are out there, but they're very hard to find, and there's not many. So it took a lot of work to locate what I needed, but what I needed, I did find, and it was very, very helpful, and it did help me on the path to recovery, along with the support of school, where I had a period of time away and then a
Mm.
phased return leading into the summer. So it's quite a soft phased return at that. So that all of that and excuse me enabled me to get back on my feet and back into the classroom and operational again, and and armed with the knowledge and skill that this would never happen to me again.
Mm. And so what's the next step from there? Because obviously we kind of know where you are now. You're not in the
Yeah.
classroom. You've started up your tuition business. Um, is it something that happened again? Did it
Do
lead
you
you
know what?
back to
Do you know
burnout?
what? Do you know what? It did.
Right.
The the truth about I've done a lot of work on burnouts, and this is true
Mm.
of burnout in most contexts. It's very difficult to go back into the context in which you burned out without making any, excuse me, any changes and remain in that context
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I mean, I did make changes. I made some quite substantial changes in the way I was working in terms of uh, the routines in particular. Leaving, I was still working. What I began to do, especially, was work. I was working longer at school, but I wasn't bringing work home with me. So it was a change of
Okay.
pace in that kind of way. But as a senior leader, as a classroom teacher,
Mm.
how much can you change? How much can you really have agency over the change which you can affect over your own work? Because, as a senior leader, I can't turn around and say, well, sorry, I can't do. You got to deal with that, and it's part of my job, and I enjoy it, and it's my pleasure to deal with those things that uh, that come to me in that leadership role.
Mm,
That's why I took on the job. Um, but my body and my brain were not playing along with that.
mm,
They weren't amenable to the situation,
mm,
and so again, through nobody's fault, except systematic uh, um, um, situations, it wasn't sustainable, and in fact, it did a lot more damage. Because as of Christmas 22, I knew I wasn't okay, and I was struggling along again. And you always hope, this is the same as everyone, you always hope the next holiday will sort it, the next weekend will sort it, the next evening will sort it, but in actual fact it doesn't really. And this
mm,
is the same, but as that thing we all experience all the time, but perhaps on a grander scale, that I knew the clock was ticking, and I was hoping that something would come in and remedy that. It didn't. The end did come, and I went off again. Only this time, what I realized was that the previous time, although I thought that I'd recovered, I hadn't really. I'd patched up, but what I needed to do was really to just recognize the situation that I was in and the
mm,
extent to which I wasn't well, and to
mm,
really surrender to that and say, well, look, I've got to step aside to become better and to really reconfigure exactly what's going on in my life. Step
mm,
aside from all work, not change the work and say, right, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. Let's go do this thing. No,
mm,
totally step aside, totally stop.
mm,
And in that mode, it took me 6 months to start to feel
mm,
I was beginning on the road to recovery. 6 months of nothing to start to feel, all of the sort of cumulative, unexpressed uh, stress and that gathers in your body and mind in our
mm.
profession, for all the good it brings us and we bring others, came out during that time, I suppose. And
Mm.
it was really from September on that I was able to start to put one foot in front of the other and move forward.
That's it feels like such a long time, doesn't it, to get to a stage where you just start to even just begin to feel normal again. 6 months of
Yeah,
you're saying nothing, right? There was nothing happening in that time. It was just rest and recovery.
that's right.
R
Just
and R.
just rest. No, because the first time I'd been off, really, I was, making my grand plan to get back into school. In the early weeks, I was making my grand plan to go do other things and other careers.
Mm,
And I never really stopped, not in my
mm,
mind, but during this period of time, I genuinely stopped in every respect. I did nothing. And it took me that full 6 months until, nearly September, until I
mm,
started to think, you know what, I'm feeling a bit better now,
mm.
physically and cerebrally, feeling a bit better, feeling I can start to look ahead now and to make plans and to start to act on those plans.
We were talking before we press record, which is kind of a good place to put this in now. That so you're at September, and you're ready to take some sort of action, taking even if it's just like I think your words were like those tiptoe steps forward, right into the next part. What were those tiptoe steps at September? Between September and I suppose now, really, because I mean, we went to the conference in September,
That's
weren't we?
right.
It was really close. Was that the middle of September, I think?
That's right. Yes. So it was, I think, yeah, toward the end, 30th of
Yeah,
September.
yeah, yeah. It was
Certainly
towards the end.
September time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the earliest steps really were, um, returning to get my mind into thinking about tutoring, because I'd got my mind into thinking about tutoring the first time I was off,
Mm,
because I'd spoken to a um, uh, uh, a friend, as our dog walker actually at the time, uh, in the days when I couldn't walk my own dogs, I was too busy doing other things, and she'd left the classroom, and she told me about life after teaching and going the tuition route, and it's something I looked into during that time,
mm,
but something I laid down because of the extent of my wellness and the fact that I needed to put everything to one side. So, it was the first thing I picked up and thought, well, look, let's go back to this. Um, let's remind myself of how it works, because during this time your memory isn't the best. So
mm,
rewatching the pit pony, rewatching some of the conversations between yourself and Sharon, for example, which started to come out during that time,
mm,
and just refamiliarizing myself with how all of that worked, and thinking, well, look, is this the time to leave education? Do I want to leave education, or is this
mm,
what I want to pursue? And the conclusion I came to is, I don't want to leave education. Um, it was never the intention to leave school. That we hear in the communities we circle in so many of these horror stories about the ways in which people are treated, and the manner in which they leave school. It wasn't like that for me. It just happened.
mm,
Um, uh, so I wasn't, and I'm not running away from education, and so this is something where I thought, well, do you know what? I can really maximize the the skill, the experience, the what I can offer. I can really maximize going down this tuition route, and most importantly, I'll be able to do it from here at home, which is going to relieve the cognitive pressure, the sensory pressure, because that's the main thing, that's really the factor which is difficult for me to step back into a school now,
mm,
because of that sensory, the noise, the bustle, the multiple questions. You know,
mm,
it's this would allow me to be more aligned with how my brain actually works, which is sequentially,
mm,
um, giving things one at a time, my full and very precise attention. Um, so that's what I decided. I was going to pursue it. So I was going to look into it. And I think one of the first things I did was to book into the Connexus conference in September. On the basis of, if not now, when, if the day you decide to get back into it, you get this come through on your Facebook or whatever, well, it's on up the road.
yeah.
I better go to that. It sounds like one of those things
Yeah, yeah,
that comes your way for a
yeah.
reason.
Mm. Yeah, a great day that was too. That was an amazing day. Um, there's a couple of things there which we should go a little bit deeper into, which is this whole stepping towards creating a business and being, I'm going to call it sort of hyper aware of your needs now. Like you are hyper aware of what you need and what it needs to be like. Because I mean, one of the questions I've written down is like, how do you avoid this in the future? And I know you've got an answer because we spoke about this before. And then afterwards, like especially as a business owner, because it is a fast track way back into chaos, because it can feel chaotic at times when there's lots of tasks on the go. Like you say, the way you work is very sequential, do one thing at a time. And it can feel very much like that can go wayward really fast if we're not careful. And I'm sure there's times when it feels like business goes really fast. So how are you protecting your space and yourself? Now you are a bona fide business owner. Like it's there, it's running, it's happening for you.
Yes, yeah. It's I think it's about recognizing your preferences, your boundaries, in a way that in the classroom and in schools, because of the way those environments are, because of the culture and the systemic factors right now, we
Mm,
can't. It's not possible. How do you protect your boundaries in today's schooling system? How are you going to do that? Uh, the I mentioned a moment ago the first step, which is removing the sensory factor,
yeah.
because as you see here, this is what it is. It's
Mm,
and removing that, um, and having me work in this very quiet environment straight away takes away a huge area of what was previously a significant pressure on my faculties.
mm,
Additionally, it's about becoming more attuned to um, who you are as a person in your mind and
mm,
in your body. As a teacher, uh, I ignored for many, many years what my brain, my mind, my body was saying. That's part of what made me so good, because I could tune out some of the things which perhaps in other instances people might find difficult. I was able to just kind of stand apart from them, uh, and in that was good in, for example, situations of pressure, situations of conflict. It was always remarked by other people how calm I was, and it was my pleasure to do that, and it
mm,
was my pleasure to serve those people. Um, but what I didn't know was I was saving up all that stress in my body and my mind. I didn't know that I had to pay it back,
mm,
like a debt.
mm,
Um, and it's about now, rather than doing the same, and then in a number of years or months or whatever, paying it back again
mm,
when I crash. Just recognizing now, this day I'm feeling it quite hard going today. I think I'll not do what I was planning to do today. I will do it tomorrow. And if that means that it doesn't get done or whatever it may be, then that's the case. And if it's not something upon which a client for today or tomorrow is dependent upon, why not?
mm.
Um, if it can be put off, it can be put off in the name of serving myself and serving more people in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah. There's an element of you could do that. Well, I think the payback thing's really interesting. That kind of it's going into your body. It's going to have to come out at some point. Right, it's going to have to. There's going to be some kind of process somewhere. But also, like I think that there's like I don't think it's just a secret, but maybe as part of what you're discovering is there's probably a lot of tasks that you can just go, well, I'm not sure that's business dependent. Does it really need to happen? And you'll probably get there faster than most of us who probably just trudge along doing the things we think are working because we feel like we have to. Whereas you can take a step back and go, actually, I'm not sure that's as impactful, or it can definitely wait a day or two. It's not going to be dependent on a client, or whether you're going to get towards the really important task in a fast way. There's also something about speed here as well, and I think like an extra level of realism that you're bringing to the table, which is we can do this in our own way at our own time. It's certainly not a competition in a sense that there are no medals anywhere at the end of 100-meter sprint in business. It's not like that. It's a very, very long game. And if you want to call it a game. And so you taking a day to preserve your well-being in the greater scheme of things are going to serve you in a much, much more positive way. And I think that's a message for everybody. That's something we can all take on board. And there's someone was messaging in the group yesterday about I don't feel well. I'm going to work at 50% for a few days because that's all I can do. And it's like, well, that's okay. But could you work at 0% for a whole day and then actually be refreshed and come back and do the task you're going to do at 100% tomorrow, or take 2 days off at 0% and do nothing so that you can come back and be who you know you can be, rather than just keep, I think, masking and um almost putting that pressure on that you just got to do it because you got to do it, which I think a lot of it is, for some of us at least, is baggage left over from teaching. We
It is.
just pop a Sudafed when we get bad sinuses and get on with it. We chuck ibuprofen in when we're not feeling great, and we just go in and do it. And then, like on your words again, get to the weekend because you're gonna be able to rest. Just get to the weekend. Oh, half term's only 2 weeks away. Get to half term, you'll have a week off. But actually, it's never enough because you're paying back too much. You're too much in debt. And I think that's a really a fundamental way of looking at it that can make a big difference. The other thing is agency here, Christopher. Like you've kind of you've said the word a few times, and then as you start talking about your experience at school, a lot of it comes back to choices and what choices you have. So as a business owner, you do have the choices. Is that something that you're relishing in, or is that another barrier for you to overcome?
No, it's the idea of having being able to educate in a way that's more attuned to how we think it should be done. I suppose that's every teacher's dream in our country right now, isn't it?
I think so.
It's
Yeah.
it's what we all want. You know, it's my pleasure uh, to be able to offer to young people still
Mm,
um, the the know-how that I've got, which is rooted in the school system where I've been for a long time, but also just able to step outside of some of the restrictions from within that system and
mm,
say, look, here's some ways that you can try, which independent of anything that you have to do or not do within your particular school setting. Um, and yes, part of that is aging. Part of it is self-expression. Not only can you do that, you can do it in your own way, in a way
mm,
that reflects who you are. Whereas,
mm,
again, perhaps in a school setting, there's a limited amount of scope for doing so.
mm. Yeah, uniform approaches in school to the point where it probably just feels quite containing for some, but too pressurized for others. I think that's probably the best way to do it. There's a crazy story last week I was reading, probably in Life After Teaching, where, and this is not about teaching or learning at all, it's something completely different, which I think is just as crazy. But they were doing learning walks. Say they SLT were doing learning walks, and they had a ruler, and they were measuring the borders around displays, like, and everything had to be a certain distance away. And I just couldn't. I mean, how unbusy do you have to be to get a ruler out and start measuring things? I mean, surely there are more important tasks at hand. But it's not just that, because I can laugh stuff like that off because I'm outside. That's not particularly my fight anymore. But my God, would I fight something like that if I was in school? But essentially, it's like what's left behind when someone's coming in and doing that. How are you making someone feel when something as small as that is getting scrutinized? And then imagine being told like your display's 1 centimeter too close to a border. Like, I just that's a kind of uniform. And I know like there's teaching and learning and other stuff you could look at, whether you're using particular schemes of work in the right way and whether you're staying on topic and stuff. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Like with for me, for agency and having your own, I don't know, style, whatever it may be. I think that's a huge thing. Look, we're getting towards the end, Christopher, and the one thing I really wanted to share with everybody is what you actually teach in your tuition business, because it is a question that gets asked a lot in the group about this or these particular subjects and whether it is a viable business. Because lots of people will go, oh no, I'm not sure, I think I need to go and do English and maths, make it a core subject to make it a viable business. What's your experience been so far? Tell us what you teach and what's been your experience with it so far.
Well, I teach uh, history, religious studies, and geography. I go by the name of Dr. Humanities. Um, I have been someone who's considered, as others might do, going up the English or maths route, but fundamentally, as part of uh, being more aligned with my values and the way in which I want to work. I want to teach the things um, that I want to teach and the things that I
Mm,
excel in. And that's why I chose to stick with the subjects which are my subjects.
mm,
Um, and I launched at the start of this year. So, really it's just a few weeks ago, at the start of January 2024, although I've been posting on social media for a little while earlier than that.
mm.
And it's going very well.
Good.
Inquiries come in, clients come in, and it's a pleasure to be serving those people and to get
Mm,
started in this new phase of my career. People need support and want help in all of their subjects. And I always thought this idea that there's only a market for English, maths, science. Okay, maybe, and maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but where's the evidence either way? Um,
yeah.
there didn't seem to really be any, by which I mean, yes, there's people tutoring in these subjects, but there's not, perhaps it's not in a very visible way,
Mm,
in perhaps the way that some people who are very visible in English and maths and science are very visible. And I just thought, well, if not now, when? If not me, who? And that's how it came about. Um, and I'm very confident in the quality of what I can offer people,
yeah.
and I'm motivated by being able to bring that to them in any of those humanities subjects.
I I was saying to you before that I get that question. I don't say like it's all the time, but if there's somebody that comes into the group and they go, oh, is this really a viable option? I was like, look, go and have a look at what you've been putting out on social media, particularly on Instagram. I think that I think it's top level. I think it's very well communicated, and I think it will end up paving the way for others. It will prove the concept. It will prove that it's something that is needed. And you're right, because if you do the research around the humanities subject, it's probably not as well publicised as, say, if it was an English GCSE or science GCSE tutor. But I think you're disrupting the water slightly with that, which is, I think, is a really positive thing, and leading by that example, without probably realizing it, which I think is amazing too. Christopher, it's been a pleasure. Just I'm going to say chatting, but I've actually just sat and listened really with you over the last sort of half an hour or so, and a big thank you, because sharing candidly in the way that you did, and being really open about that journey of um, burnout and autistic burnout and what that really meant for you, how it felt. I know there's going to be a lot of people who resonate with that, and I think this will get a lot of comments with people, maybe more questions. Maybe that's something we can, at some point in the future, when you feel a little bit more settled, like in your business as well, because I know it's growing. I know there's going to be times, like we said earlier, running a business can feel chaotic, and getting things in place can take a little bit of time. Uh, but it'd be great to just share some of the support networks that you found that worked for you, because I mean, that's the one thing that I can definitely do in the group is share that. I'm not an expert in these things, and I've not experienced it in the same way you have. So for you to have that worldly knowledge around this, and maybe a space where someone can go, like, if I'm feeling like this is a good thing to listen to, it's a good community to go and connect with. So it'd be great to be able to share that at some point at a wider level. So I really thank you, and appreciate the openness and honesty. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me along today. I've really enjoyed being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So how I'll end it is, if there are people who have resonated or feel in a similar way, what I'm going to ask Christopher to do is to share any relevant, could be blog posts, could be podcasts, and I'm going to put them all in notes, so that if at the end you're like, oh my God, that's me, or that's how I'm feeling, or perhaps you're at the early stages of what Christopher was sharing, what it was like for that 6 months to a year before the actual burnout. Prevention's always better than getting to that point. So perhaps that's the thing that you need. So we'll share anything, Christopher, like that, and I'll make sure it's readily available for anybody or everybody who needs it. Awesome. Thanks so much, pal. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.